Delta CX, available for CX and UX consulting, projects, and training. Contact us for a free consultation. Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast. It's me, Debbie Levitt from Delta CX, and today evidently is July 27th, 2020. Time is flying, and I'm glad everybody can join us today for What You Need to Be a UX Junior. This is going to be the first time we're having a panel discussion, so I thought for the comedy aspect I would wear my American sportscaster headset so I could look like I'm calling a sports game, trying to wrangle all of our guests. Please remember that the best way to support what the Delta CX universe does is to subscribe on YouTube. The channel, of course, is Delta CX, and subscribe and ring the bell. I go live 2, 3, 4 times a week with hopefully useful, actionable content, so please subscribe. You can also join my Slack universe, which is free, deltacx.link/join Slack. So that plug being out of the way, I also wanted to mention one of our air conditioners isn't working, so I hope this fan isn't bothering people from a visual perspective. People listening on the audio, you are spared. As always, we are completely live, and Amy Dalton says, hi Amy. Sorry, good to see you in the audience. Sorry you're not up on the screen with us today. So we are live on LinkedIn and YouTube. If you have any questions or comments as the discussion unfolds today, please throw those in and I will make sure we ask your questions and get your comments. But first, I'm going to bring in all of our guests and welcome them and let them introduce themselves. And I forgot to ask, Yas, do you say your name Yas?
Yeah.
Phew, okay. Well, let's start with you, Steve second, Scott third. Please introduce yourself. Who the heck are you? And tell everybody where they can find you and follow you.
Hi, so I am Yas. I am a UX designer. I'm a consultant. I started doing design probably over about 5 to 7 years ago. I come from a product design background. So I did actual physical products at the beginning of my career, and then I moved into digital. I've been very lucky in my career. I have had a really nice trajectory. I have transitioned from different parts of design to different parts of design. I've gone through manufacture and everything. And I now work for a large firm doing design.
Super. Thank you. And let me spell your name for the people listening to the audio version. Your first name, Yas, is spelled Y-A-S. And your last name, I'm going to butcher that. Can you please say your last name?
Caon.
Caon is spelled C-A-O-N. So for those listening, please find her on LinkedIn. Do you tweet? Where should we find you?
My Twitter's underused.
Okay, that's fine.
The best place is LinkedIn.
Okay, great. Steve, tell us about you and spell your name, or else I will.
Steve Zebrowski. Steve spelled S-T-E-V-E, and you forgot then. And Zebrowski, Z-E-B-R-O-W-S-K-I. I'm co-founder of Stage 1. And that's a UX design, product design, user research business. And I founded Experience Z, which is same type of business. The plan is to basically merge the two. I've been doing product design, UX design for a very long time. I did a degree in product design and have gone into web design straight after that and progressed my career doing pretty much UX. So I've been doing it for 20 plus years. So I'm one of the earlier people, showing my age.
I'm with you, old man. I'm 48 and I've been doing this forever. Ooh, we've got echo. So Scott, introduce yourself before we get into our panel discussion.
Hey, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Scott Smallman, SCOTT-SMALLMAN. I'm a user experience lead for a company called Karmarama. Started originally in web design. I did a degree at Teesside University in the UK, came with a first class honours degree, and have gone from in-house to agency to consultancy and back to agency again. So kind of gone all around the different kind of ways, predominantly focusing on UX design and user research. And my role at the moment now is obviously supporting my team and different companies in different sectors.
Okay, excellent. And it is accidentally an all British panel minus me, so hopefully we'll have some good global advice for everybody. I also want to welcome some people popping up in the chat room now. We've got friend of the show Maggie, who just started a new job, and Anna P. and Jamie. We've got 12 people in YouTube right now, and I didn't check LinkedIn yet. Somebody's phone is vibrating right near their microphone. Who
That's
is
probably
that?
mine. Mine's going off all the time.
They're very popular, Steve Z. Okay, so our show is what do you need to be a UX junior? And obviously there's a lot of discussion and controversy around this. And so, as you know, you are all welcome to agree with each other, disagree with each other. We want all of the different opinions and angles today. And we can't all talk at the same time. So let's start a little bit. Let's pick some different topics and just kind of round robin it. So let's start with education. What education do you think juniors should have or must have, and what are some forms that you tend to recommend? Yas first.
So I think everyone should learn about accessibility, regardless of what type of design you do. I think that's like a given, and you must learn it, and it's absolutely vital. 20% of the population are in some way of need of an extra help, both sort of in a mental capacity and a physical capacity. So I think that's a definitely. In terms of, sorry, what was it? In what things we should learn?
Education. Yeah, I mean, whether you think they need degrees or courses or certificates or just some of the key topics you think they need to know.
I don't think you need a degree. I think it helps for sure. I don't think you need one. I think if there were more, I think when I went into my degree, there weren't as many options as there are now. I think now that there is, if I had to do it all over again now, I don't think I would. There are plenty of boot camps, but then I'm sure we can go into that at some point later. It's very controversial. But I think also, like, especially as well as code, I have a lot of coding friends who they are constantly reading up and constantly learning more and more languages because it's required of them. For that kind of industry. I think with design, it's the same. I think you've constantly got to be schooling yourself. You might know best practices, but you should always be reading up about theory and always be learning about parts of especially in I would say in UX, the psychology of things and psychology of reasoning and stuff. I think it's important to stay on top of it. That's the quick things that have come to my mind. But
okay, I accept. If you come up with more, wave at me and we'll get back to you. Steve Z, what do you want to add to that or disagree with?
So I guess old school. So I back in the olden days of Web 1.0, I come from a product design background. So that was using 3D Studio Max, 3D AutoCAD, using Adobe Suite, and so on. And that's what I used in my degree. So I actually did a product design degree, and I wanted to go into games design afterwards because I loved doing the 3D animations and 3D product design. I ended up going to web design, and then from web design, my natural tendency was thinking about how the users want things to work. That's my default setting. So I've always been like that, and I think now things have changed over the decades. I think it's quite important if you want to get into UX. I think the key is to understand how people do things and why do people do things. That's the key. I think without user research, there is no UX. And so if you're like coming to the point where you're leaving school and you're thinking, well, what's the next stage, or what should I do if I need to do a degree or want to do a degree, then you should look at psychology or computer human interaction, human factors, that kind of thing. I would say that's probably number one. And number two, because I come from the visual and the design side of things, and I think going back a number of years, there were three avenues. There was the psychology route, there's the product design route, and then there's the development route. And I think that's still happening today. But I'd say the second route would be design and do product design and think about. And I think it's actually quite useful to think and come from an actual physical product design rather than digital product design, because everyone thinks UX is about web design, app design, software design. Actually, that's just one very small but very popular area. You've got things like a chair, or a car, or a tent, and things like that. All those need to be designed. And how do you interact? How do you put up a tent? Especially when it's gale force winds and you've got long grass, etc., etc., pouring down in rain. It's like, I just want to put a tent up because I want to get inside and get warm and dry, kind of thing. And it's all that's UX. And people, I think, a lot of people think UX is to do with digital product design. That's just one area.
But we'll fight that one on another podcast. Today we're just focused on advice for juniors. I just want to get people focused on advice for juniors. So I'm going to shift over to Scott. Scott, from the education standpoint, what would you advise for today's up-and-coming juniors?
I think ultimately we've talked about, design, UX, psychology. The thing we've kind of not really touched on is empathy and just human connection and just having that emotional intelligence and understanding how you and the world around you works, and how can you, there is in my opinion, there is a need to have, to care what people think and how they act with stuff, and to, learn about that, learn how things work. And to Steve's point, he's right. My entry point was, web design. So I come from more of a product perspective, and that's where I specialize now. But actually, there is so much more around the physical, and obviously, as we now get into new emerging tech, and we start to talk around voice and away from obviously the visual, and it's more into kind of the other different channels. It is that learning aspect. So it's constantly learning, constantly seeing where we've come from, where we're going, and just keeping learning. So, in terms of a degree, I personally now, even though I have a degree and I went through that, it was great for me as a person to grow up, go experience a new life. But actually, I left university and already 6 months was out of date in terms of the technology we were using. I was using ActionScript in Flash, using Macromedia products. And then all of a sudden, it's like, we don't do web banners anymore. Right. There are tools for that. Where HTML5 was like the new hot topic. So it's not about learning tools. It's not about learning the current, is it Figma or is it Sketch or anything like that. It's kind of learning about the world around you.
Great. So I think we've got 4 votes for psychology, because I vote with that too, and a lot of what you said all plays into it. So I'm going to try to sum up every round. Like, okay, we all said psychology. It sounds like we all said you don't have to get a degree, but a degree can help, and obviously can always continue learning and growing and determining the best practices. Let me see. We've got a question in the room. I'm trying to determine if it's too early to ask it. Okay, Tanya, I see your question. I'm going to hold it a little bit if you don't mind. I want to ask our panel a few more things, but it's a good question. And also hello to other friends of the show who are here, Stephanie and somebody calling themselves Stage 1, but I think you've been here before. So let me next ask a little bit of the controversial question. Thinking about the answers we just gave about the what kind of education we hope people have gotten and will continue to get. Do we think your typical boot camp or short courses or set of short courses is going to prepare people? I'm asking this in a specific way. Is it going to prepare people for that entry-level job? Yas. Should I go backwards next time?
Yeah.
No, I think it depends on the course. I think that's the main issue. I think... I can't speak on behalf of them because I haven't been on one. And I have ran, myself and 2 others, we facilitated and sort of started up it was like we called it an UX after school club. And it was basically for people that didn't have access to these boot camps that cost an arm and a leg and the whole body to pay for. And we said, look, let's teach you about UX. Let's teach you what UX is, what UI is, what all these different facets of it are before you go ahead and spend all this money and pump all this energy and time into something that you might get a couple weeks into it and go, that wasn't my cup of tea. What a mistake. Oh, no. So we kind of did that. And it was really interesting the guy that we were facilitating it with, I work for a big consultancy. He works for a fairly big agency, and he was doing a lot of kind of like in-house work with one specific company. Anyway, he had been to a boot camp, and we brought up boot camps into the thing, and he said, like, I love it. It was great. It did X, Y, and Z. He said, I know that there's some bad things about it, and I know that there's a stigma, and I know that some employers see that boot camp and immediately throw it in the bin, and they don't give it even a look at, which is disappointing, especially if you're spending that much
unfair.
money. And they do obviously evolve. So I kind of came with these are the controversial things that people have said, and this is why people don't like it. And he said, well, these are reasons why it was great. And he was saying that they give you continued support. They give you like a clinic for careers. You can literally come in anytime you want and use those things, but not everyone does. They come out of it and they just complain. He also said there's not enough people that are coming out of these things and saying anything about it, which I think is something you've touched on before, Debbie. But there's different sides to it. And I think it depends on the place you go. It depends how much you utilize it. It depends how much you turn up. It depends how involved you get. And yes, it's their responsibility to make you involved. But I think it depends a lot is my short answer, is my line. But I don't have enough experience with people coming in from those. I think Steve and Scott might have more experience with working with people that have come from boot camps.
Yeah, and we're getting a pile of questions in the chat room, so I'm just going to poke you guys a little bit. I mean, I'm the most long-winded person I know, but I'm going to challenge you guys to give some short answers so we can start getting to the questions in the chat room. So, Steve, short version, do you think today's boot camps and online courses can make a junior job ready?
I think I see them as more of an intro. They give you an intro into certain processes, certain tools, so you've got a bit of knowledge. It's a bit like you can get these web design and development courses, and they give you introduction to JavaScript, introduction to HTML5 or whatever. So I think it's more of an introduction. I think what they lack is real life situations, real projects, and the business logic. And I think something which is kind of like a bigger picture, but it's a starting point, is you kind of need to be a sort of an entrepreneurial mindset. So you kind of like need to be able to come up with solutions, see patterns, and work from that, and sort of move forward from that, and be a kind of like a self-starter. And I think with the UX, it's a unique role. I mean, because you could BA is another route into UX, I see, because BA is like you're analyzing the situation, analyzing business requirements. You're not seeing it from a psychological and user perspective, but there are crossovers. I'm aware I'm sort of stepping off the boot camp, but I think there are links there which are useful for juniors or people want to get into UX.
And if nobody's going to be insulted, I'm going to start a 1-minute countdown for answers. So, Scott, your thoughts?
Yeah, that's given me time to think. Okay, I think it depends on where they are in their career. If they're a junior UX, but also junior in terms of professional, that's a double tough blow to get into. You have no commercial experience, you don't know how the world works in terms of business. It's hard. I think personally, I've reviewed hundreds of CVs, hundreds of portfolios this year, supporting people that are trying to break into the industry, and I think the expectation is too high. I think they're told they're ready for the world, and actually, I think to Steve and Yaz's points, this is a great introduction. Is this right for me? Is it not? They're taught deliverables and tools, not how to think and what outcomes are. We talk about outcomes over outputs, and I think it's a too broad a subject matter. They're being taught this is user research. No, this is usability testing. This is one small compartment of UX as a practice, and ultimately there is so much to unpack here. But actually, just in that really quick terms, it's a great entry point, but it's not the be all and end all. And I think people are being set up for failure from these boot camps.
Yeah, and I barely have to answer that because I have multiple podcasts on the subject. Most recently, please look up episode 56. Sorry to put stuff over your faces, but I talked about my phases of proficiency and how I believe boot camps are teaching, sorry, Scott, at the building blocks level, and when we really need people learning at the science and technique level. Sorry, I have everything set to go to the left side because that's usually where my face is, so I'm not covering my other guest, but now we've got the Brady Bunch here. So I too worry that boot camps aren't helping people get ready, but let's look at a couple of relevant questions that have come up to education as we've been talking. One person, Jamie, says, what education steps and advice, and what I'll ask you guys if you want to raise your hand, because I know not everybody may want to take every question, and we'll try to go through them fast. What education steps and advice would you give to a junior UX researcher who already has a bachelor's? Anyone want to take that one?
I want to ask what the problem is.
Yeah. What's the bachelor's degree?
What's the issue? Are you not
Okay.
applying to jobs? Like,
That's a good question.
what's the blocker?
Yeah, Jamie, you're on YouTube. If you're still here, let us know. YouTube's usually about a 20-second delay. LinkedIn is like a 3-minute delay. So when a LinkedIn person has a question, I'm very nervous that we're not going to get a follow-on answer in any time today. Jamie, tell us more about the degree you have and what challenges you're facing, and we'll try to give you some thoughts on that. Tanya's question was, hi, everyone. Why do you think companies are all hiring senior UX designers rather than juniors? Won't this create a lack of senior designers in 5 years? Scott.
So I joined my company a year and a half ago as a lead. I stepped up from a senior into a lead role. And I think now being responsible for a team, responsible for kind of hiring and looking at portfolios and bringing in the right type of people, especially in an agency, it's probably different for in-house, but you need the foundations and you need to be able to the support structure. You know, you can't just bring in.
Uh-oh, I think Scott blipped again. He was blipping when we were testing on it. Oh,
all
he's
these
back.
different things.
You're back.
Sorry, I don't know how much you lost there. Sorry. I'll quickly repeat what I said.
Roll back
I
15
think there's an
seconds.
issue with 15 seconds. What did I say in 15 seconds? You know, unless you've got the foundations, people will not be supportive. You know, if they, you know, we're seeing job specs of asking for their first UX designer to come in and challenge the business, do the UX design, change the world. If you don't have the foundations,
make us customer centric.
Yeah, and if you bring in seniors that can support the juniors, how are they going to grow into seniors and not get disillusioned with the industry and their role?
That's a great point. I'm going to write that on the screen because I think one of the biggest things is people are waiting for someone else to do something. So the seniors have to mentor and help today's juniors, because I find that a lot of jobs just want to bring in juniors and throw everything at them. So I hope I spelled everything right. So anybody else want to take that one, which was about I lost it now. This was, why are companies only hiring juniors? 1 minute, go. Steve.
Why are companies only hiring juniors? Or
Yeah, that's where we were, I think. But go ahead.
I thought it was seniors.
Why are companies only I read it wrong. Why are companies only hiring seniors when today's juniors will be seniors in 5 years?
I think it's two things. Number one, UX has broadened. I mean, a lot of things have happened. A lot of technologies are coming in place. Things are changing constantly. And so UX 10, even 5 years ago, was a smaller umbrella, but now it's a much bigger umbrella. And you can go into user research, and that's part of the umbrella, but you can even delve into even further and go into voice user research, for example. Also, UX has many hats. As a UX senior, you kind of need to do strategy, tactical, project management, business, understand business workings, and even people management, and it's the softer skills as well. So it's kind of like you have to do everything.
Yeah, and someone asked here.
It's a challenge.
Yeah, speaking of challenge, someone asked, what about some of the softer skills? How do you learn? And their example was soft skills like collaboration. Now, I think of other soft skills as presentations or waging small wars to be a customer advocate. I think of these as some of your soft skills. Where can you learn these in school, or do you just have to learn them in work experiences? Yas, thoughts on this one?
So,
I want to give her a chance.
yeah, sure.
I think you can learn them over time. I think, honestly, I didn't learn them in any form of education. I learned them through working. I've worked since I turned 18. I've done retail. I've done like promo. I've done like nightlife. I've done hospitality. I've done everything. Not everything, but like I've done a wide range of jobs, and I've worked with people a lot. So it's meant that I have good people skills. I am able to put a point across. I'm able to be polite to customers. I'm able to have like a firm hand when I need to. I know how to do all these things. And I think I don't know how I would teach somebody. I would probably put them to go and work in retail or hospitality. It's such a character building thing. And everyone should do it. So if you're stuck at home and you're not getting your design job, go and do that if you can. Because it's so useful, but I don't know how. I think it's a skill that you must learn and nurture and really grow with. I think it's definitely very, very valuable. I think it's the most valuable. You can know all of the theory, but for things like researchers, if you're not able to talk to the person that you're trying to gain the research from, you need to have such a good rapport to be able to be a user researcher. I think to be a good user researcher.
I'm going to pass to Scott. Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to keep everybody to a minute. It's a 1 hour show, guys, and we're half over.
Completely agree. I studied performing arts when I was at college. Was into drama. I worked for a radio station when I was at university and was on like the street team. So I was out talking to people, engaging. And I think those lives, there's the thing called the School of Life in the UK where you can actually go and learn some of these soft skills if you've not had the opportunity. But I actually put that into one of my mentees. I challenged them to go and do an improv class because they were nervous about talking in front of people and feeling confident in what they were saying. So I said, well, most of it is made up on the spot. You just go with the audience, you read who you're talking to, and you change your how you voice things. So that was their challenge away from UX to build those soft skills up. And it depends on who you're working with and what their background and experience is. And I think that's probably the crux of a lot of what we're going to talk about is there is no one fit at all, unfortunately. There are so many different ways of doing this job. There are so many different experiences you can have. Actually, there is no true entry point, in my opinion. I think it comes from your experience and how what makes you better at what you do.
And time. Steve, I'm going to skip you unless you're on fire because we have so many questions flooding the chat room. We have so many people watching today. We have like almost 40 people.
I do have one thing which
you've got a minute.
Helped me. It's helped me, and it may be something to help other people. Learn to talk to people on their level, because then you're kind of like engaging, and it's kind of like you're not talking at them, you're talking with them, and you're kind of like trying to see it from their perspective. And I think that helps.
Yeah, and I would say that also matches what Scott said about playing to your audience and what Yas said about learning to deal with different types of good and bad personalities in retail. My background is music and those types of performing arts as well, so I'm in the bucket with Scott of adjusting what you do for your audience. And that's just, I don't know how to teach someone that. That's just something I do. So we've got a couple of interesting questions that I don't know if there are fantastic answers to, but I'm curious about your opinion. So raise hands if you want to jump on this one. Raghav on LinkedIn asks, and then we'll go back to Jamie because Jamie talked about the degree. Raghav asks, how do I get a UX designer job when I don't have any experience yet? In the Indian market, they're asking for 2 to 3 years of experience for an entry-level job. It's tough here. And we see that in other countries too, that your first job doesn't want to be your first job. What can we tell people they can do to get real experience? Yas, what's your thoughts?
I was going to say, I have recently, I made friends with this girl. We were at a meetup, and we were doing this like CV workshop thing. It was a talk among other talks. And I noticed her sort of scribbling down, like, what's your goal for this year or something? And she wanted to become a UX designer. And I was like, hang on, like, what are you now? Because a lot of the people in the room were. She said, oh, I'm a teacher. I want to transition. And I was saying, like, because I think this is a good point. It's kind of related, but she wanted to transition into UX. And she was saying, oh, I'm going to be a junior. I don't have any clue what I'm doing, rah, rah. And I was saying, look, like, you have so much experience that you can put into this and like not claim to be design, but really kind of relate to it. So she's been teaching she's been teaching school kids for like 10 years or something silly. And she's been obviously overtly and covertly sort of watching them. She's been doing lots of kind of like child psychology. She's been streamlining the way she marks it. She's done stamps so that she doesn't need to write everything. Like she's thought about it, and she's been doing lots of problem solving. And I was like, look, you can use all of those skills and apply them to it. So it's the same way that, like, if you do retail and you do X, Y, and Z, you can relate those things. So whether it be your first or second job, you can use life skills that you've been doing before you get to that point.
That some things might translate. Any 100%. Guys, did anybody whose name begins with S do something to add? Steve?
I have a question to the audience. What's appealing about becoming a UX designer?
Yeah, that's an individual question to ask each person. Why are you going into it? Scott, did you have something you wanted to answer to Raghav before we go back to Jamie and Jamie's bachelor's degree?
No, I think it is tough. You know, there, as I said earlier, there's no right or wrong way. And, you know, to get into UX, eventually I had to go around the houses. I had to be a software engineer. I had to be a business analyst. I had to do kind of entry-level UX. I just wanted to understand the team I would work with and kind of their needs, their pain points, and how I can, you know, mold my work to kind of thought and be part of that team. So, again, I think Yas is right. You have to take your previous experiences and understand why you want to do this role and what you can bring to it.
Great. And the other thing that I would add to that is, while I know a lot of jobs have put up this wall of you must have a few years of experience to come into your first job, which I wish they would take down. I wish they were judging people more by their portfolios and their interviews and not how many years of whatever you've done before. So I usually don't look at resumes and CVs. I kind of don't care where you've been or whether or not you had school. I look at the portfolio, and if the portfolio shows that you've got some talent, some good approach, some good foundational knowledge, you're somebody I want to interview and get to know. Yeah. If the portfolio makes it look like you are guessing your way through a mountain of bullshit, I probably don't want to interview you. So I just tell people your best chance is to have a great portfolio showing solid, I won't cover Scott's face again, but showing solid science and technique, not just, hey, I did some tasks and they might not have been done well. Let's get back to Jamie, since we've delayed Jamie. Jamie says, it's a BS in informatics HCI. My problem as a junior has been jobs wanting either a master's degree or 2 to 3 years of experience. And Jamie wonders, would going to a boot camp help Jamie stand out? I'm going to go with no. What do you guys think? Anybody? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Go to a boot camp to stand out from other people? I say no. No. Okay, for those listening on the audio only, that was 4 no's. Let's see what other... Guys, keep asking your questions. These are great. I'm scrolling up and down because I can't even get to all of them. Amber has a great question. Amber in the YouTube chat says, do you think someone can successfully learn UX design on their own? I'm currently transitioning out of a completely opposite career, and I'm teaching myself. Who wants to speak to the self-taught? Scott?
Yeah, I am technically self-taught. As I kind of roll carved when I went into a startup 2-3 years after leaving university. I had been a software engineer, knew I wanted to be into some sort of UX because I cared what people thought and wanted to do what was right for them rather than just think about what was best for the business or what was easy from a technical standpoint. I think now I'm a lead and I'm responsible for, you know, nurturing and growing talent in my team and, you know, those around me that I support. There's only so much you can learn on your own. I think regardless if you have a mentor or you're being taught, you still have to be self-taught because you still have to find areas that interest you. You still need to do your own study and you still need to grow as a practitioner and as an individual. But without the support around you, whether it be a mentor, whether it be a lead or a senior in your team, you will only get so high. Unless you build good foundational knowledge, you'll hit a ceiling very quickly. and you'll try to move around and trying to find different ways. But ultimately, it's about surrounding yourself with people, even if it's just meetups and conversations. There's so much more you can do than just self-study.
Okay, excellent. Anybody else want to talk about self-study? Steve, you've got your minute.
I think, I mean, from my background, because UX, there was no such thing as a degree in UX. It was product design or psychology. I think teach it yourself. I mean, that's what I had to do. There are courses which you can do. I think it's a personal decision. If you think, right, actually, I need to learn about X, and there's a course, a 3-day course or an online course, then take it. If you think, I'm not really going to benefit from that, but I would like to see some videos on it and people talking about how they deal with it, and then give myself a project, do it that way. So I think everyone's, have their own way of doing things, but kind of like do it based on the interests you have. Everyone has slightly, you may be really into user research, or you may be really into technology. Do it from the perspective that you're really interested in, because then you're going to want to do it.
Oh, perfect timing. Yas, anything you want to add?
I think we're good. I think I said everything that I probably would have said.
Okay, and as for me, my thought on self-study, the short version of my thought is get a mentor or coach. Because even though you are self-studying and even though you are doing lots of work, you're only going to go so far if you don't have someone else to look at how you're applying what you're learning and saying, you're doing this right, you're doing this wrong, you did this well, but what about this? Hey, put that critical thinking hat on. I think all the fans of the show know my critical thinking hat. Put your critical thinking hat on. So podcast, if you go to the YouTube playlist for live podcasts, you go to episode 37. So you want to go into UX, you can hear more of my thoughts. And then last week for episode 39, we did how to select a mentor. So I would recommend those back issues. For people who want to hear more of my take on this, but I highly recommend the mentor and coach, because that person can really help you focus and also keep you away from some of the garbage videos and articles that are out there. We've got...
I would also add, use your friends so much, because your friends are users as well. And if you don't have that much access to a mentor, or if you don't want to piss your mentor off by constantly nudging whatever, use your friends as much as possible to get their opinion on what you're making and what you're doing.
But make sure you have the type of friends that will kick your ass, because if you just have cheerleader friends, if you have gold star friends, this is where I have to run Maggie's favorite video. Yay, your portfolio's great. Of course you're going to get a job. You're so good. Oh my God, love you, moi. Then
you want the kind of friends that tell you that you look bad when you look bad.
I always say I'm a tell me my ass looks fat in that person. So does my ass look fat in that? Yes. Daniel said, universities don't get input from UX companies to allow students to understand what it's like in the real world. Rather than making UX academic, they should make it more creative. And Adis gave him a hammer emoji, I guess to say you hit the nail on the head. And then later Daniel said, portfolios can be easily faked, but I have found that good interviewers will get to the bottom of that quickly, because then we say, why'd you make this design decision? And when we watch the unavoidable response that flashes on that person's face, we know. So I agree that I hear a lot of stories of faked portfolios, stolen portfolios, but if they do make it to the interview process, obviously a savvy interviewer will see through that. David Snodgrass, who's going to be a guest coming up on the podcast, says retail is also a great place to practice observational skills. So all of that people watching you've all been doing and all that, we can call it now observational skills. Let's see.
Debbie, just on the university point, I can't speak for, I don't know where the viewer is based, but my previous university does reach out, and I know that my partner, she studied advertising marketing, her university reaches out to previous graduates, and I've been involved over the last 10, 12 years on supporting the modules, what they're doing, helping them say, actually, no, you shouldn't be teaching this anymore, you should be teaching this kind of thinking. So I can't, that's not every university. Mine might be an edge case. I don't know, but actually, I think people should be more involved. I agree with that sentiment, but actually, it's not a case that no one's doing it, because there are people doing it.
Well, I think the sentiment is, and I've heard this from other people, and it's, you can never say no one or everyone. We want to stay away from the universals, but I know that in many cases, the boot camps are very happy to make the money that they're making. The universities are getting their tuition, and they're not always going back into the industry and saying, what are you doing that we need to prepare people for? So I think there isn't as much of that kind of cycle as there should be. Let's see, what else are people saying? More questions, people. Amber, who asked before, said, I'm super interested in UX design because of the ability to create empathetic solutions to make better products for people. Well, Amber, your heart's in the right place, but you're self-studying, so hopefully you can find some mentoring to go with that. Daniel says people go into UX because it looks easy and pays good money. The industry needs some form of official qualifications, same as if you wanted to become a lawyer. What do you guys think? Should there be some sort of, hi, I'm a chartered UX accountant? Should there be some sort of body who is formally stamping people saying, you look like a good UX designer? Who wants to take that one first? Yas.
That's makes the whole industry so inaccessible for anybody that wants to join, is my biggest problem with that. We're already saying boot camps are so sad for the person because they have to put so much money into it and make such an investment. If you then need to become a chartered designer, it closes the doors for anybody that isn't rich, basically, or able to get that. So I don't think that's the answer at all. Yes, there's always going to be varied levels of skill in any job, in any profession. You can't avoid that. There will always be bad people. You have to just hope that your company is good enough to weed those people out and spot those fake portfolios, and you have to hope that your company is able to pump some money into your education and be able to get you to go to different conventions and get you to do online learning and things like that. But I don't think that's the answer in any job. I think, yes, if you're a surgeon or a lawyer or something of that nature where it's literally life or death, prison or freedom, but I don't think that's the answer, unfortunately.
Okay, anybody want to agree, disagree, add to that?
Yeah, I think things change so much and technology changes and UX needs to adapt. So by the time you've written a kind of course structure or anything, it's out of date. So I think it's that there are basic principles, and those basic principles can be courses, but you need to be able to adapt to change, and you need to kind of be motivated as an individual, have that kind of mentality to be motivated.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that actually people coming from different backgrounds brings different insight and different ways of approaching the subject and the challenge. So you would lose that if everyone was, cookie cuttered to a certain profession in a certain way.
And Stephanie, who was our guest on episode 51 about surveys and how they're not always our best choice, Stephanie responded to Daniel in the YouTube chat and said, our job looks easy. She says, some people tell me, hi, your job looks fun and easy. How do I become a UX designer? She says, I blame all the Post-its and bullshit workshops. And everyone in the YouTube chat is crying, laughing in response to that. We've got a question from Swaraj, but I'm not sure I understand it. How to be able to deliver into a higher role from UX designer to UX head if someone gets selected by the company? What is the best way to fit into the new role? What I think that person means, though you can take your own interpretation, is if you're a UX designer now, how might you move up to, I guess, lead director or head? Any advice from any of you on leveling up? Steve?
Yeah, I think it's the strategic and business aspect of things. You need to understand how, a lot of people will have about the user needs, but it's within the business requirements. And you need to adapt to those business requirements quickly and be able to please all the different project managers and influence those project owners. You get some of those people and say, oh, we've never used UX before. Why do we need it now? Well, how do you deal with those pain points, shall we call them? So put simply.
Scott?
Yeah, I guess the question back, more for thinking is why be a manager? A manager, whether it be UX, business, project, it's a career change. You're less doing the doing, and to Steve's point earlier about being, tactical, strategic, deliverable, you're doing less of the hands-on, and you're more enabling the people around you to be successful. So it's less about you and about the we. So, as I said, I've stepped into that lead role now. I would like to move into a different role because I'm never going to be the greatest designer, greatest researcher, but I know that from experience and learning, I'm good at working with people and I can help bring out the best in people. So that's where I want to go in my career. But a manager doesn't, I know people that have been in the industry 20, 30 years and are happy being senior designers because they get to balance being hands-on and support the growth and development of people in the industry.
Yep, great point. I can't believe the amount of questions and comments we have. So we only have 12 minutes left. We're going to have to do part 2, everybody. Somebody named either Ali or Ali says, regarding previous experiences, would it be beneficial for us to keep work experiences on our resume or LinkedIn profile from previous experiences like retail? My answer would be if you have room and you can make them relevant. When I see somebody did hotel front desk for a summer, I usually tell them take that off unless you can put something there about what you did that tells me why I should care that you worked at a hotel front desk for a summer. Anybody want to add to that, or can we plow through some more questions? Okay, I'm going to plow. All right, let's see. Boot camps, Nita says, boot camps also give you mentors. Doesn't that count? Nita, please watch episode 56. How proficient can a boot camp make you? Because I lay down some ugly stuff about boot camp mentors. So I'm going to say, do they count? Depends how good they are. Some of them are wonderful and some of them are not. So you need to do a little more research into who they are to make sure you're getting someone who is a good match to you. Possibly also see episode 59 on how to select a mentor and make sure they're right for you. Anyone adding to that? Raise hands. Otherwise, I'm going to plow through questions. Can you recommend a program? Ralitza, can you recommend a program that delivers a good UX foundation? I've done 10 courses so far, and I still feel like I don't have a good basis. Any courses or platforms you guys tend to like or recommend?
I tell people to go to IDF. I think IDF's a really good resource. I think it's got lots of theory on it, which is really useful. I say generally, check out YouTube, see if it's exactly the one you want to go through. I say, let's talk, and I have a conversation with them and say, okay, UX, UI, research, service, all of those things, what's your background, rah, rah, rah. And then I say, have a look at YouTube, get some other opinions that aren't my own. And then check out Interaction Design Foundation, because I think they've got such good theory, and they do the accessibility, they do the Gestalt, they do lots of different theories that I think is a really good basis.
Scott.
Yeah, the question I would say is there comes a point when you can't keep studying the theory and you need to do the practical. And you need to actually say, okay, I've learned this, here's how I can adapt it to my way of working, here's what I learned. And, I know I'm speaking for everyone else, but every time we do a new project, even time I do a new project, I try something slightly different. I go, okay, this is what I learned last time. Here's a retrospective. Here's what I'm going to do differently. And here's what I learned from it. So, we're talking about learning, we're talking about mentoring, but actually you still have to apply this learning. You still have to see what works and what doesn't work and how you can evolve it. So keep learning, but keep applying.
Yeah, and I see Ralitza followed that up with, I'm doing IDF, LinkedIn Learning, Udemy, Udacity, and Coursera. So I would say, Ralitza, get a mentor or a coach. Somebody needs to look at what you're doing and figure out what are your goals and why do you feel like you're not getting to them and how do you know you're not getting to them. So I would say this is a place where you're trying to do some self-teaching and you're trying to do some self-assessing. And I would say get that mentor or coach and have someone step in and try to help you find direction, because otherwise you might just be guessing. Nicole, is it cheating to look at portfolio projects that others have done as part of a course if you're doing the same project? Anybody have a thought on that? I've always got an answer, but what do you guys think? Should I just run with this one? Is it cheating to look at portfolio projects that others done as a part of a course if you're doing the same project? I think the downside to looking at these is that nearly every portfolio I've seen from some of these courses I've thought was a poor portfolio. So are you just copying another poorly done project? I would say that certainly in UX we do competitive analyses. We look at what other competitors and people are doing. We don't want to rip them off. We might find inspiration, but we can't assume that those other companies are doing anything right. I go crazy when clients say to me, well, just do what Amazon's doing. And I go, well, their site, thing one, their site changes every week. Thing two, you're not Amazon. So I would say, Nicole, you are welcome to look at other portfolios that did the same project, but remember, that might be a shitty portfolio. And so don't assume that just because other people made it through that program, that that's a good portfolio. So again, maybe a mentor or coach can help there. Let's see. Ralitza says, whole separate way to learn interview analysis. Ralitza, go to curiositytank.com. Maybe take Michelle Ronson's courses. You get $50 off with Delta CX50. I make no money. I said, take whatever money you'd give me, give it to these people. So take Michelle Ronson's courses on research. That might help. And she is fantastic. We are almost caught up with questions, but we're almost out of time. So if anyone has last questions, speak now, or we will have to do the sequel, Part 2, the entire UK returns. Swaraj says, thank you all. Neha says, if I have prior 3 years experience of development where I collaborated with design teams, but now I'm a new grad in UX, what level of positions should I target if I'm a new grad? I get this question a lot, and it usually comes in the flavor of, does work I've previously done translate enough that I should be able to enter UX as a higher level? Can you guys comment on when you think people's previous experience allows them to translate at a higher level, or are you always coming in as junior or associate? Yes.
My advice would be, and there was a question earlier that I was thinking exactly the same thing, just start applying to jobs. Just start applying to jobs and talk to them and talk to the employers and just find out what they think. If they say this is too high that you're going for, this mid level is too high, but we do, and then they might then say, oh, but we do have one as junior. Then at least you're placed, or like you can go to a few of them and they say no, mid level is fine for you, whatever. But I wouldn't go into the interview either going, is this the right level for me? I would wait for them to say it's too high or too low. Just go for it. It's like, and for people that say, oh, it says I need 2 years of experience, and then we're saying, okay, portfolio should be able to hold you, just go for it. And like caveat it, if they say, oh, you don't have 2 years experience, you can say, well, I think my portfolio is better than some people with 2 years or 3 years experience. So my advice is go for it. What's the worst that can happen? They can say no, and they can give you some advice. They give
you have to look
feedback.
at the maturity of the company. You have to look at the maturity of the company, what the kind of team around you is. A senior in one company could be a midweight in another. Your experience is valuable. Does it translate? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It depends on your personal brand. What is the role looking for, and what can you bring to it, and what do you want to work on, or what do you need to work on? So there's a lot of different things around that, but ultimately it's where you and the company, are you a good fit? You should be interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you.
Steve, anything to add?
Yeah, no, I agree with both of those things. I think, yeah, if you don't apply, you don't know. But I think there may be certain previous jobs you might have been in which may give you a head start, such as research type of roles, or BA roles, and maybe you come from a digital design background for, if you're working in digital design arena, you're designing, you want to go into UX and a digital product design. So I think there are certain avenues where you could go maybe do a sidestep, but you can't jump forward until you've actually been in that sidestep. So it may be you're going sideways for 2 or 3 years longer, but in a different profession.
Yeah, thanks for that. What I would add is I find that when you're in a little bit of a more complicated situation where you're trying to make other work translate, sometimes the best way to try to find that job is through a recruiter. So sometimes a recruiter or some sort of middleman will tell your story, and the company already knows them and trusts them. Like in America, one of the biggest companies for great creative talent is Aquent, Aquent. They don't pay me to say that. I'm just happy with them. They found me one of my first jobs, and I'm always grateful because they knew how to tell my story. Because I was trying to translate some weird work, and typically a company wouldn't have looked at my resume, but the recruiter told my story. And I think that it's up to us to tell our own stories in our CV, resume, portfolio, website, interview, whatever. But sometimes to get in that door, somebody needs to come in and say, I know this is a mid-level job and Neha is newer to UX, but she's got I think it's a she's got a degree. I don't see pictures. She's got a degree, and hey, she did this other work in design and development, and it's really going to translate. You should meet her. So I always tell people, make relationships with recruiters where possible. I also want to mention episode 15 of our podcast, which was That Job is a Stretch, Should I Apply? And also episode 42, Great Relationships with Great Recruiters. So again, I'm working very hard to fill the YouTube library with stuff that you guys will hopefully find relevant and helpful so I can keep referring it to in this way. Boom, boom, boom. We have one more question, and then we're going to have to wrap up. Oh my gosh, time has flown. We've got a question from LinkedIn saying, if you're going the boot camp route, how to make the most of it? My advice is always a mentor or coach from outside of the school to do a little check and balancing and keep challenging you. What other suggestions do you guys have for making the most of a boot camp? Ooh, cricket. I don't have a cricket.
I suppose I haven't really had much dealings with boot camps. I've only from feedback. It sounds like they don't go in enough depth. They're only just hey, here's a wireframe, this is how you do a wireframe, this is why you'd use a wireframe. But you may need to judge whether it's doing wireframes is the right thing to do. I mean, You've got all these processes in UX, but sometimes you have to decide what's the right process for that project and for the people involved in those projects. So
yeah, that's my strategy level at the top of my little pyramid that I won't cover Scott's face with, and I don't expect that from juniors. I don't expect juniors to be too strategic yet. That's my thought. Anybody else on making the most of a boot camp?
I think why did you join the boot camp in the first place? What are your needs? What do you want to get out of it, and how can you? We talked about measuring success earlier. You have your own metrics. You know what you want to get out of it, whether it be to improve your foundation of UX. Maybe you want to get better at UI design. I don't know. If you know what you want to get out of it, then measure it. That probably will help. But yeah, it comes down. We can't say this is good, this is not good. It comes down to kind of what is it successful for you?
Great point. Yas, any closing words?
I think use and abuse all of the tools that they are providing you. If they do give you a mentor, I know some of them do give you a mentor by default. Really, really use it as much as possible. If they have, out of hours sessions, go to them. If they have an open office and you can come back every time while you're waiting for a new job, go. Just use everything that they're giving you as much as possible because you're paying enough.
If not too much. Great points. Well, my gosh, we are going to have to wrap up. Didn't you feel like that could go for 3 hours? I know not everybody gets as excited about this as I do. Thanks to all of you. And really, I'd never met you guys before. You're just LinkedIn connections. So great to have met you. Thanks for coming on the show. Yas, Steve, and Scott. Everybody, look them up on LinkedIn and connect or follow them. And of course, you know me, Debbie from Delta CX. And any closing words from anybody else? No, so you're just get me out of here. All right, You have dinner to go to. You're all in the UK. Well, thanks to everybody. Thanks again. This will be, of course, archived in the live podcasts, and tomorrow it'll be available audio only on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play. Thanks again to our guests. See everybody around the known universe. Please subscribe. I won't put that over Scott's face. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I'm going to play us out of here. Thanks to everybody. Have a great night and day wherever you are. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks for watching. Delta CX is available for consulting and projects related to CX and UX strategy, leadership, training, problem finding, problem solving, and innovation. Learn more at deltacx.com.